All right, let's get started. Let's get this party started. Midday mindfulness, right? So good. Especially coming up on Shabbat, and we've got Pesach coming up next week, which is exciting, and it's going to be so different than it's ever been every other year. So that's an interesting thing for sure. Today we're going to do a practice that's a little different than the practices that we've been doing. We're going to rely on the breath that we've been building our capacity to be with all week. We give a variety of different skills. And now that we have a little bit more of the capacity for being with the breath, though that it takes time to build, we're going to open our attention up a little bit more and do a practice that I've seen in the Hasidic masters a few different ways. So one of them is the Piazetzner Rebbe in Derech HaMelech. He teaches in his book called the King's Road, or the Royal Way, or the Royal Path, or something. I don't know how you want to translate it exactly, but he talks about the fact that our minds can't really be predicted, that the content of our thoughts actually is not within our total control. And there's a lot of different rabbis who have said something like that, and masters who have said that in all kinds of other traditions. And I think that if we haven't noticed that by now, let's start to notice the fact that really we don't have a great predictive capability of our thought patterns. He says, he gives the challenge, and I've given this to a few different classes. He gives the challenge: if you were to try to predict your next hour or day of thoughts, it would be impossible. None of us could do that with any great accuracy. And he said that if you not only could you not predict it, but that if you were to be very carefully catching every thought and noticing every thought, you just looked at an hour span of thoughts, or a day span of thoughts, or a few days span of thoughts, you would, from the outside looking in, you would say, look at those thoughts, any one of us, this is not just me, or you would look at those thoughts and think, this is a crazy person. The thoughts that are going on with this person are crazy. And he says the only difference between a crazy person and somebody who's sane is not the thought patterns. The thought patterns are similar, he thinks. He's not a doctor. He says the thought patterns are similar, but the crazy person acts out. The person who's sane has the thought and then lets it go and doesn't do anything about it. And so that's in another place, the Piazetzna, in a different, I think it's the same book, but at the end, in the credits almost, it's in one of his last pages, he talks about the practice of hashkata, which is sheket. The word sheket means quiet. Hashkata is from the same root as sheket, to make quiet, to make your mind quiet, to quiet your mind. So now the goal of this practice is not to quiet your mind. That's not what we're actively trying to do. He admits, even in the telling of the tools for that practice, that he even says la'at la'at. It happens very, very slowly and gradually, that your thoughts can slow down. He says it doesn't actually ever stop, but it does slow down. And the way that he teaches, that he was taught, is an interesting story, that he was learning with a different partner than usual that week or that day in the yeshiva. And the head teacher, the Rebbe of the class, pulled his learning partner into the room, into his office. And he said, "Oh yeah, you come too." So he wasn't even being called himself. It was only on account of this partner he was not normally learning with that he was pulled into the room. And in that space, the Rebbe taught him, them both, how to quiet their thoughts, how to quiet their minds. And the practice that he taught, which is very similar to what we're going to do today, not actually exactly what we're going to do today, though I'm going to give us a little bit of more guidance than what he was given, is notice every thought that comes up. Be watchful of your thoughts. So as opposed to having that run in the background and not being aware of what's going on internally, notice every one of them that comes up. And so he gives an extended version of what to do later after you've already started to notice. He says basically you'll notice the thoughts, and as you keep noticing them coming up, they'll actually start to quiet down. So if you notice them, then they'll start to lose their immediacy. They'll notice that. I think the way that I experience it in my own life is that when I give those thoughts the attention they need, they don't need to come up as often. So I give them the attention, and then they know that they've been heard. The message has been received. Whether I want to do anything about it is a different story, but at least I received the message. And then they get quieter. And he gives us a plan of what to do once it gets quiet, which is the way that I teach, actually. I teach people how to get quiet. And once they start to get a handle on how to get quiet, on how to start to really notice, it's not about getting quiet. It's about how you notice. The skill is noticing. The effect is the quiet. But once you start to really notice to be able to notice what's happening, then I begin to do what he described as filling in qualities, different qualities and different kinds of thoughts, and enhancing and giving a more wholesome pattern of thinking, that building that into ourselves. We can do that. We can program ourselves. So first, just notice. As a result of noticing, your mind will probably get quieter. And once it starts to get quiet, which is what we'll do in the continuation of our practice, once it starts to get quiet, then we can start to fill in wholesome qualities that our tradition is trying to teach us and reinforce within us, like peace and calm and love and compassion and gratitude. And just there's a whole list of qualities that our tradition throughout the year, based on the time of year, is trying to help us to cultivate. So we'll go through those as we go. But the first piece really is this attentive quality, and that never goes away. The importance of that never really goes away, ever. You need that as a base for everything, So it starts here. The end result is that it starts to quiet down, but that's not the goal. So we'll do the practice. The practice we'll do today is based on the breath. So by now, all y'all should have some understanding, at least. I'm looking out and I see some people who have very, very deep practice, so I know you have this already. And so what we're going to do is we're going to pay attention, notice. We're going to do the same setup that we do normally. We're going to trying to draw our attention into our senses. So we do that first with sound, and then into our body, feeling our body, and then we bring ourselves to our attention to our breath. And once we get to the attention on our breath, we're going to notice our breath, just like we've been doing all week. And you can use any of the tools that we've been using all week, whether that's feeling your entire body expanding and contracting as you're breathed. You can notice that you're actually being breathed, like we did yesterday, just that actually without doing anything, your body will continue to breathe. You can also notice the different parts of the breath that we talked about, and especially the transitions between inhale and exhale and inhale, that little pause where it's neither of them. Or use the counting. I've given you a good amount of tools. That's a lot of tools for noticing your breath. So choose one of those. Use that as your base. And the next piece of what we're going to do is we're going to keep our mind a little more open than normal. Before we were just focused only on the breath, but now we're going to, with our eye kind of like out of the corner of our eye, in our periphery, we're going to start to notice the thoughts coming up. And if we can, without getting caught in them, we're going to notice the thought, give it a little bit of attention that it needs, and then bring our attention back. That's an ideal version of the practice. What actually happens in the practice a lot of times is that I'm noticing my breath, and then before I know what's happening, I'm way off in thought land. It's not like I noticed it coming up. By the time I'm noticing it, I'm way, way, way down in that thought train. And that's okay too. When I notice that I'm down the pathway of that thought train, then I make a decision to come back. And we're going to do that. If you can get to the point where you can really start to notice the thoughts germinating and generating, give it the attention and come right back before really getting too far off, that's great. But either way, the practice works the same. The end result is the same. So just different stages, and it depends on your mood, and it depends on your energy, and it depends on how you've eaten, and it depends on how much stress there is in the world, and it depends on all kinds of things that we're not in control of necessarily. So let's do the practice. The practice of hashkata, of quieting down. All it is paying attention to your breath and noticing the thoughts arise and then coming back. Listening to the sounds of your surroundings. Bringing your attention closer to you, your immediate space, even your body. Scanning from toes on up to see if there's any extra tension in your body that you can release. Toes, feet, ankles, calves, shins, quads, hamstrings, hip flexors, glutes, low back, belly, chest, upper back, shoulders, arms, forearms, hands, fingers, neck, cheeks, mouth, eyes, forehead, and bringing our attention to our breath. allowing our attention to settle there. Keeping our attention on our breath, but out of the corner of our eye, noticing if any thoughts are arising. Corner of our attention. And when inevitably the thoughts arise, honor them. Pay attention to them. And bring your attention back to the breath. If your attention is wandering, just noticing where you've gone and bringing your attention back. Really getting interested in how our breath actually is. Taking a few deep breaths, put a smile on your face. Optional. Give yourself a little stretch, a little bit of air, a little bit of oxygen, a little smile, a little gratitude. Look around. Somebody with a completely Chinese name wants to get into our, like it's in Chinese characters. Like, I'm not, I don't even know how to read it. I think I should let them in? All right, y'all. Shabbat Shalom. I'll be holding services on this link tonight at 7 p.m. And I'll look forward to seeing y'all soon. I think I'm also teaching this class Tuesday and Wednesday next week. Look out for Facebook event thing, advertising. And if you're not on Karen's list, Karen Hurwitz's list, and you want to be on it, I think Jan Silver is going to lead a session next week on Monday, a special session before Pesach, and then I may decide to do something next week, though. Not sure, just because I'm being stretched with childcare and all of my responsibilities. So maybe wiser for me to just settle down and recharge. If anybody would like to just check in and work on practice, get some more guidance on how to install a practice in your own life on a regular basis, I'm happy to talk to you. Just reach out and we'll find a time. All right, y'all. See you. Thank you.